Hi there. Welcome to Bible/Chat. Jason was sitting far back in his chair back there, just relaxing, just kicking it,
Summer.
chilling.
Yep.
Summer.
Let's get this over with.
Oh, my stars. Summer vacation starts now.
Well, this is just Bible/Chat. It's
You've
not
been in
like
school
a sermon.
a lot. How many degrees do you have?
I only have, counting undergrad,
Yeah.
3. That's it,
2 master's degrees.
Yep.
And you're halfway through a master's right now
unfortunately.
in biblical
I mean,
counseling.
fortunate.
Yeah, very good. So that's exciting.
Just kidding.
Well, we've been
Yeah.
talking about communion.
Yes.
Fun times. I mean,
Biblical times.
biblical times. Biblical times.
But no, it is good.
Uh,
It's fun
And we
to talk about it.
So we got a question from a listener
Yes. From across the pond.
across the pond, who's now on our side of the pond. Chris Fuller. We love Chris Fuller.
Yeah. He doesn't like Man U, though.
He doesn't like Man United.
He doesn't like
but
soccer, I heard.
Yeah, no
Or
football.
football.
So I heard.
Excuse me.
He's a rugby cricket guy.
Boring. Okay.
Well, anyway, any game that lasts 5 days. Only the British. Nothing personal, Chris.
Yes.
We love
Are
you.
you answering this?
I am.
Okay, so the question that he asked, and this is a really huge question, and this is like kind of the crux of the Christian life type
Yeah.
of question. What is the Christian's relationship to the law of Moses,
Okay.
or to the law?
Yeah, to the law
Yeah.
generally.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, okay, so just for starters,
Yeah.
Christ is the fulfillment of the law, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
a Christian is one who is united to Christ.
Right.
Christ has fulfilled the law in completion, and
Uh-huh.
therefore a Christian is seen by God as having fulfilled the law in completion.
Because
right?
we're united
So-
to him by faith.
United to
right?
him by faith, we have his righteousness granted to us, Romans
Right.
chapter 6, united in his life and in his death.
Yeah. yeah.
We have his righteousness imputed to us, and so
Right.
we have the fulfillment of the law granted to us.
Awesome.
So we've
That's
fulfilled
great.
the law
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah.
presence of God. He
No.
sees us as having fulfilled the law
Yeah.
in completion. Ephesians chapter 2 as well. So
Yeah,
we have this
absolutely.
idea that the fulfillment of the law has happened for the believer.
Mhm.
And then there's the question then, well, what do I do with the law? Because now I'm a Christian. The law has been fulfilled by Christ, so now
Yeah.
I don't have to keep the law
Do I just
for
chuck it?
righteousness. Do I just chuck it? Yeah. And theologians have often referred to what's called the third use of the law.
Yes. Yes.
And there's like some debate over how much we want to go into that. But
Yeah.
I think if we just look at a couple of specific texts, it'd probably be helpful.
Okay.
One is in Romans chapter 13. Paul is giving some instructions in Romans chapter 13. He talks about submission to the government.
Yeah.
He talks about some other things that we ought to do. Verse 8, he says, owe nothing to anyone
Yeah.
except to love one another, for he who loves his neighbor, and then this is interesting, he
Mhm.
says, has fulfilled the law.
Yeah.
And then he gives a number of the 10 commandments in
Yeah.
verses 9 and 10.
Right.
Verse 9, you shall not commit adultery, not murder, not steal, not covet. Any other commandment, it is summed up in the saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law.
That's awesome.
Now, why is that fascinating? Well, what Paul is saying there is that the law that is written in our hearts through the new covenant, we now have this reality in our hearts.
Yeah.
It is yielding in us a love for neighbor because we
Right.
have seen and know the love of Christ. It produces a love for our neighbor,
Right.
and therefore the law is now written in our hearts so that we then
Right.
long to obey it,
Right.
and we do obey the law.
Right.
And so we are not under the law in the sense that the Jewish person was in
Right.
the Old Testament.
Right.
Christ has fulfilled the law and set us free from the law.
Yep.
But now, by the power of the Spirit in us, we can walk according to love, which is ultimately going to be a fulfillment of the law.
Yep.
And so Paul says exactly that in Galatians chapter 5,
Yes.
verse 18. He says, if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the
Yeah.
law. So
Yeah.
he's saying, if you are led by the Spirit, you're not under the law.
Yeah.
The law is free. But in
Yeah,
verse
yeah.
16, he says, but I say, walk by the Spirit, you will not carry out the desire of the flesh. And so we have the Spirit who's in us, and by the power of the Spirit in us, we
Yep.
now obey the law. And
Right.
so for the Christian, the law is no longer a weight or a burden, like Peter described it in Acts 15,
Absolutely.
but it is a glorious blessing to us so that we would walk in love and
Right.
fulfill the law
Right.
to neighbor and fulfill the law to God. We love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. So
Internal.
internal,
Yeah.
those are internal things, which then yield external obedience.
Always, right?
Always have
Yeah.
to obey. That
Yeah.
reality of obedience is going to flow out of us because of what we've now seen and experienced in new birth, in the law being written in our hearts as Christians.
Law being written in our hearts because new covenant,
Right?
new heart with the
New
law,
heart, yep.
Spirit
Yep.
in us, all that one
Yeah,
truth
that
about
one reality,
salvation,
which is
yeah.
union with Christ,
Right.
And his imputed righteousness. We
Yeah,
have all that
of
in us. Yep.
Right, and because of all of those internal realities that have happened supernaturally by the Spirit through
Yep.
the gospel,
Yeah.
outcomes.
Out comes love
Right.
for God and others,
Which
which
is
ultimately is a fulfillment of the law.
Right.
And so the law now gives us a way, we might say a channel,
Yeah.
through which that water of love that's coming out of
Yeah,
our
yeah,
hearts
yeah.
will then be poured and directed.
That's awesome. So then we shouldn't say, okay, so we're not under the law like an
Right.
Old Testament Jew in Israel with the presence of God right there.
Absolutely, yeah. Romans chapter 6, right?
Right.
We're no longer under law, but under grace.
Right, wholly different system.
Yeah.
Same way of salvation, but
Same
still
way of salvation.
like,
Yeah.
But then, because the Christ has come,
Right.
changes have been made.
Yeah, yeah.
It's easy to like disparage the law,
Yeah.
right? Kind of like, I mean, there are places where you read the New Testament, and you're like, oh, is he saying
Totally.
it's burdensome, it's bad?
Totally.
But
Absolutely.
what would we say?
Yeah, we would say absolutely not, right?
Yeah.
Romans chapter 7, verse 12, Paul says, so then the law
Absolutely.
is holy,
Mm-hmm.
and the commandment is holy and righteous and good. So he says,
Yeah.
the law is good, but he says, if I try to obey the law in my own strength,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what am I going to do? I'm going to yield works of the flesh,
Right.
When I try to do that in my own power, I'm just doing external obedience without a love motivation that then becomes
Yeah.
the fulfillment of the law.
Yeah.
What it's going to produce in me is not good things. It'll produce bad things in me.
It would be Phariseeism, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Either Pharisaism or licentiousness, right? I mean, one
Yeah.
or the other is going to come out of me.
Yeah.
But when through the power of the Spirit, I see the beauty of the law and the beauty of what it means that I can love God and love neighbor and fulfill all of those commandments in
Yeah.
that way. Then what happens is the law becomes beautiful to me, and then I
Right.
long to obey it. I want to do what God has called me to do, which is just a fruit of the new covenant, right?
It is.
Hey,
yeah.
I'll put my law within you and cause you to walk in my statutes. That's
Right.
expressly what the new covenant
Yeah.
says it will that it will do.
Yeah, we will internally want to and are now able to, because we've seen
Yeah.
the glory of Christ
Totally, exactly.
in the gospel, all of those things. So I think at the end of the day, it's really important just to say, obviously, we're not under the law like
Yeah.
Israel was. However, the law is not bad. It's
No.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's only beautiful and fulfillable
Yeah.
in practice for a believer.
Yeah.
For someone who's been
For a true
internally
believer.
changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Who has that new heart, new
Right.
life by the power of the Spirit of
Yeah.
God, who then produces those works of righteousness
Yeah.
in us.
But then this truth is, like, all believers of all ages, even
Yeah.
before before Christ came, even David loves the law.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he meditates on it.
Yeah.
And Psalm 1 talks about that's the blessed man,
Totally.
right?
Oh, I love that. Your law, it is my meditation
so
on the day. Yeah.
It's like the same spirit of the believer
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is there
Yeah.
from the get-go.
Totally,
right?
absolutely. Which is a whole other discussion point
Yeah.
because we could argue for were Old Testament saints regenerated, but
Yeah.
which I believe they were.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the point there is
Yeah.
that love for the law
Right.
is a fruit of a true knowledge of God.
Right.
When you really know God, you love His law and
Right.
you want to obey it. You would never want to disparage the law because it's your joy
Yeah.
to please God.
Yeah.
Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5, we have as our ambition to be pleasing to
Pleasing,
Him.
yeah.
Right. So there's this longing in the heart, like, man, I want to please the Lord because
Right.
man, I love Him.
Right.
And how do I please Him? Well, I please Him by loving Him and serving Him, and I please Him by loving others and serving them. And so I will fulfill the law both
Right.
with Him and with others
Yeah.
as an outflow of my love for Him.
If you love me, you'll keep my commandments.
Exactly,
Right?
which goes back to that, right?
Yep.
So at the end of the day, the law is a blessed thing. It's a
Yep.
glorious thing for us.
Absolutely.
Though we're not under it,
Right.
it becomes our joyful
Yeah.
obligation in the presence of God
Right.
because of what He's done for us.
Absolutely. Very, very helpful. Very thorough.
All make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, I
Awesome.
hope that makes sense for you. If you have any other questions on this topic, it's very tricky, so feel free to put comments in the YouTube video. Thanks so much.